There's many people that are new to recovery, and sometimes setting those goals are pretty challenging.
Once I got a year sober, I was finally able to really start looking at some long-term goals.
So for me, it was really just building a lot of ritual and routine that is the basics of self-care.
I hate to admit it, but I probably brushed my teeth at most once a week, my last year of addiction.
Thanks for joining Don't Hide the Scars, of course, presented by Pain, Parents, and Addicts in Need. I'm Jason LaChance, and I am with our outreach coordinator, Julian Carvajal. What's going on, my brother?
What's up, man? How you doing?
I'm good. Christmas was good and looking forward to the new year, which we're going to dig into. You're very active in the recovery community in Fresno. I'm about an hour north of Fresno. So, here in my home base, get out and get involved with people. But there's many people that are new to recovery, and sometimes setting those goals are pretty challenging. And as we've talked about, you've shared your story here on the podcast, but you got sober around the holidays, and of course,
Yeah.
it's kind of that early phase of, well, I just want to remain sober one day at a time. But can you think of maybe that first uh, New Year's Eve? You had maybe about a year under your belt of sobriety where you were really taking a look at the goals that you wanted to set for yourself.
Yeah, so I'll go into a little bit of background too. So when I got sober, it was October 16th of 2021. So when I left inpatient, it was the middle of November. I think about a week or two later, it was Thanksgiving. So my sobriety, the beginning of my sobriety was right in the holidays. It was actually a big thing for me when I was an inpatient that I was an inpatient during Halloween because that's my mom's favorite holiday. And I remember thinking every year before this, I really didn't want to help her set up decorations and do all this stuff. And it was really, honestly, kind of a nuisance in my life where I was like, I don't really like this. I like Halloween, but I don't like doing all this stuff that my mom likes doing. And usually I have to do all this. I have to be the one to lift all the heavy stuff and whatnot. But when I was an inpatient, it actually made me really sad because I really wanted to be with my family that day. And um, anyways, past that, I did Thanksgiving and Christmas and all that. And for me, holidays weren't really a trigger. I
Mm,
think mainly because my parents have been sober my entire life. And because of that, whenever we have Christmas or Thanksgiving or any family holiday, we don't have alcohol at the house, and the majority of the time we have those holidays at my house, and my extended family doesn't bring alcohol to my parents' house. So that was really a way that made it a lot easier for me. Um, but I went to a Christmas party. It was like a work Christmas party at the time for my girlfriend, and I went with her, and there was a lot of drinking and smoking weed, and I think we talked about this before, but I
yeah.
didn't really prepare for leaving or anything, and it ended up being good. But that was one of the times that was more difficult for me during the holidays, and then New Year's Eve. I think the once I got a year sober, I was finally able to really start looking at some long-term goals. Before
Hmm.
that, I wanted things. I think about after 6 months, I started looking towards the future and how I could develop more. But definitely around that time, I got my first, I don't want to say real job, but it was definitely the most professional job I had at the time. I got it like a week before I got a year sober, so that would have been um, in October, the beginning of October of 2022. Um, so my entire focus during the new year was how am I going to further myself in this?
Right.
career path, basically.
Right. Well,
It
let me
was
ask you a
in
question, Julian. Do you think that there is a point that is too early in someone's recovery to start setting goals?
Absolutely not. Yeah,
Okay.
I think you should be setting goals from day one. Like from day one, you should set the goal of I'm gonna make it till tomorrow.
Yeah,
Because
yeah.
that's I think sometimes people think goals are so far off, but you can make goals, very small goals. Like my goal is to make it to the end of the day sober,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
till tomorrow sober, the next hour sober. Like these little goals were something big for me that helped me. Like, okay, I obtained these little goals and built on each one of them. And it was like, instead of waiting for that big win that made me feel really good and get that big dopamine
Yeah.
rush,
Yeah.
I was taught by other men in the program of AA and by my sponsor, like, hey, you have to set these little goals. And our mood is goes from like 1 to 10, right? Or 0 to 10. Zero being like deeply depressed and suicidal, like really bad.
Yeah.
10 is like ecstatic, you're on top of the world, euphoric. And I remember specifically, I won't say his name, but a young guy in AA who gave me a lot of advice at the beginning, told me that recovery is about staying at a 5 or 6 because addiction was being at 0 to 2 or 8 to 10, and there
Mm,
was no in between. It was either
mm.
those two. And for me to be successful in my recovery, I had to stay at a 5 or 6,
Yeah,
and that
yeah,
would be my
yeah.
goal, and make sure I don't go past 6, because then I could easily get addicted to those feelings again, and to not let myself drop below like a 4.
Yeah.
And
Well, and
I
I
think
think that's really important to share too. Especially with the small goals, and sometimes when people think goals, they do think this, we love the
yeah.
word manifesting. Like, I don't know how many recovery. Well, I'm manifesting whatever. It's like no, some of y'all, be it the individual in recovery and along with the family, is those small ones, like you said, because rituals and routines got to change. you know I know that you and I, different substances.
Yeah.
I was a booze guy, and part of that ritual and routine: wake up horrible, sick, pop the aspirin, ibuprofen, whatever it was, get through my day, hungover in various levels, whatever it is, and then come home with the booze, or if the booze isn't there, make sure that I pick that up before I get home, because of course my plan was to never leave the house, which, yeah, that didn't happen. So it had to change in a way for me that, as simple as, like you're saying, is, for a minute at a time, an hour at a time. Simple goals as, okay, I got through today. What can I do tomorrow? When am I going to hit my meetings? Like, actually having plans of these little things. Who am I going to talk to? So the goals, they don't, I think early on, you can't set the lofty goal of I'm going to conquer the world, because, like you said, I think that can pull you above 6 real fast, like into
Yeah.
that rush of, I'm
Or
going to,
below.
or
If you
below.
don't complete that goal in time, it'll drop you down. Because I've done that for sure. It's like,
New Perceptions North, the premier drug and alcohol treatment and recovery center in Central California. A full continuum of medically supervised, top quality care with programs for detox and patient residential treatment with dual diagnosis, intensive outpatient treatment, sober living support groups, and more. New Perceptions North provides adult men and women with the highest caliber of professional health care, treating each client with compassion and respect, in a safe, comfortable environment to begin the process of recovery, to proudly create and sustain a life without addiction. Call 559-978-1507 or visit newperceptionsnorth.com.
I set these massive goals that are just unrealistic, honestly. It's not that like I didn't try, or that like that I really sometimes set just absolutely ridiculous goals in my head. And if I'm halfway to the deadline and I'm not even close, I immediately start feeling bad, and I will go, and I've had that experience of I'm at like a 4 for 2 months because I know that entire 2 months I'm not going to hit that deadline, and then it takes me another month after that deadline to get myself out of it. I've had that experience.
Yeah. What were your goals like as far as, rituals and routines? Mine was as simple as making my bed and brushing my teeth.
Hmm.
These are things that I failed. I actually went and visited some former coworkers today just to do a holiday check-in, and I'm sitting in, and I had this thought of, oh my gosh, these poor people. I used to walk in with the next morning booze breath, and because I didn't brush my teeth. I wasn't bathing regularly. I wasn't, making my bed. Who knows? I don't know. I might have been in the same clothes for 2 days or something. It's so for me, it was really just building a lot of ritual and routine that is the basics of self-care.
Yeah, I didn't honestly. I hate to admit it, but I probably brushed my teeth at most once a week. My last like year of addiction, it was bad, and um, I don't think I set these personal goals like making my bed and brushing my teeth at the time, but I definitely remember it was it felt weird getting back into the routine of that. When I was an inpatient, I think the first week I probably showered like twice just because I was withdrawing so bad that I couldn't take my clothes off because I would get like hot flashes and the chills so intense that like I barely left my bed, in inpatient because it was so overwhelming for me.
Mm.
And taking a shower was really, really difficult. I mean, warm water felt good, but if it wasn't like hot water, like I was gonna start having issues.
Hmm.
And but after that, we had to make our bed in inpatient and in sober living. No one like made sure you brush your teeth, but I think just the foundation of I have to make my bed, I have to like shower. I only have like this time slot to shower every day. Having those little pieces of structure imposed on me, I think really helped me start to build that for myself. And I actually remember, I forget how it goes exactly, but I remember we were watching a TED Talk type of recovery thing, and the guy said that he was in jail and he looked up and saw that someone had like scraped into the bed frame or something or the ceiling,
Yeah.
um, saying that your your thoughts become your words become your actions, and your actions become who you are, or becomes your character, and your character is who you are.
Yeah.
And and then he went on to talk about how he was in prison and did the brushing teeth, making his bed, and built on that foundation. And I think he ended up going to the Olympics.
You're talking about Tony
Or
Hoffman.
yeah, yeah. I
Yeah.
was just about to say that. So it was Tony Hoffman. Um, and I remember it really hit me that phrase that he um said in the TED Talk that he saw in jail. And I thought about that for probably the entire first year of my sobriety. I thought about it every day and started building a foundation just off of making my bed and doing these little things. Especially when I got to sober living, I really started setting these little goals. Like um, I remember when I started my first step in the program, in the AA program, I was like, all right, I'm gonna write 5 things because I had to write um, how my life was unmanageable and examples of how I was powerless to my addiction. So every day I was like, all right, every day I have to write at least 5 things in either column. So 5 things total and do that for a week. And that's how I did my first step and I did it in a week and I was like, all right, I'll do 5 things. I would sit down, I would spend maybe 20, 30 minutes thinking about it. And that was, how I finished my first step quickly. And from that, I continued doing that with the following steps. It's like, all right, I need to set out this amount of time every single day and hold myself accountable to these little things. Hold myself accountable to washing the dishes after I eat every day. Make sure that I eat 2 to 3 meals a day because when I was using, I'd eat one and then throw it up, So
Yeah.
it was just small things to help me expand.
Yeah, you know the irony of what you shared there about Tony Hoffman. My goodness, the far reach of that gentleman who's become a friend was the first person when I had my, some say slip up, relapse, whatever you want to call it. I mean, it lasted a night, but that was the first person I spoke to, and so it's ironic that that very saying that you're talking about was foundational for me as well,
Mm,
because it allowed me that reflection of who I was being as opposed to the distance between who I was being and who I wanted to be.
mm,
And so for me, it helped with that closing of the gap. And, that's what so much of the early recovery is about. It's not only patience with ourselves, but hopefully our loved ones. And as we've talked about, you have loved ones in recovery, so you have a good amount that get it.
yeah,
But some don't, and that's really the thing that I really want to encourage. If it's some of our folks that attend the support group meeting on Wednesday nights, listen to the podcast, try to get information, is it the patience of time, you know, like as long as they're making some progress, just be there to support that progress, and instead of maybe throwing any judgment, just asking, hey, if you want to talk about your goals, I'm here for you, and how can I help? Because that's really what we need. They say the
yeah,
opposite of addiction is connection, and I think there's so much validity to that, and and that connection, at its very basis, we think is totally with others, and in reality, the main connection we got to make was with our true nature, like who we are, and
yeah,
really so we can start to get to work on who we are as an individual. And that's why anybody that's coming into recovery, I always say, give the 12 steps a shot. It's a worthy endeavor, because at the
yeah,
very
absolutely.
minimum, especially if you have a sponsor that helps you work them, you're getting such a great foundation for life in how you can set goals and reflect. That's an important part of me, is being God centered, and asking, is this what God wants me to do, or is this my selfish will that I want for ego and whatever else? And there's nothing wrong with, I use my skills and talents, as a, someone's done broadcasting for goodness, how old am I? 26 years now. Um, Media production, all these different things, and that's how I generate income. And some of the paydays I get are nice, but it also allows me to give more too. So, but that wasn't the way I was in early recovery. Everything was, I need to hoard it all for myself, and that's
Yeah,
okay. That's okay.
yeah. That's how I was for sure. Maybe not my first year, but definitely my second year of sobriety. We talked about that before as well on I think it was the previous podcast. And I think I really believe that at the beginning, uh, really you just got to do what you got to do. Like, don't hold yourself to these crazy standards of I have to be perfect. No one in the history of AA has done the program perfectly. No one has followed every step and done everything perfectly right without towing any lines or, you know, do what works for you. I mean, I, I used to work out like early in my recovery. I used to work out till like I would puke because for like it gave me that feeling of changing the way I felt,
Mm.
and honestly, I needed that at the time. Like I needed to feel. I also would drink coffee like so much that I'd get anxious, and then I'd regret it and be like, "Oh, I'm anxious." Like, and it would make me want to actually want to use, but it was enough to where it changed the way I felt, and even though it was a negative feeling and not like a positive high, even though it was a negative feeling, it was still at the time better than what my baseline was.
Yeah.
And I needed that distraction. I needed to be focused on how uncomfortable I felt from drinking the coffee to not go out and use just from being by myself at the time. And I think it's another thing you said was the connection is the opposite of addiction. My mom always says that to me. When I was fairly new in recovery, one of the little goals I set was that I would talk to someone new at every meeting, and I would try to do like newcomers. So whoever announced that they were a newcomer, I would go up to them after the meeting and introduce myself. And I think it's really important to do that. And it was something for me that was a big deal because
If you or a loved one is struggling with addiction, please call PAIN, Parents and Addicts in Need, at 559 579 1551 or visit us online at painnonprofit.org. Follow us on social media on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok at Pain Nonprofit. And please subscribe to the Don't Hide the Scars podcast and share with others wherever you get podcasts and on YouTube. And if you would like to donate to PAIN, Parents and Addicts in Need, please click the link in the description to make your tax-deductible donation today and help us save more lives gripped by addiction.
it was one of the goals I set. I think I said that I would do it for like a month. And at that time I was going to like 2 meetings a day. So it was it was a lot of people. But it's the reason that now I have every single meeting I go to, I know someone. And that makes me feel really good now. And it has for the past 3 years is that I know like no matter how lonely I feel or no matter what I'm facing, I know that truly I'm not alone. And especially in the rooms of AA, people are so giving and so
Yes.
willing to connect with you that you never have to be alone if you don't want to. And it's good to set goals, not only personal goals, but community goals as well.
Yeah, yeah, I couldn't agree more. And one of the tools I like to leave people with in this is there's all these different techniques really to set goals, and sometimes we don't know how. And what worked for me was SMART. I don't know if you've heard this, Julian. So it's specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time bound. And a big part of that, is writing down the goals, creating an action plan, prioritizing these goals, and be willing to adjust the goals. Like I was like you, like, oh my God, I'm gonna have the largest podcast on, I forget what I was talking about then, like rock music or whatever else it was. And I didn't have time for that yet. I was doing so
Yeah.
much that had to be focused on the rebuilding of myself, being a father, a good employee, coworker, and all these things. So, um, it's really important, and I'll put it up here on the screen. SMART: specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time bound. And it makes me think of how you were with meetings. Okay, you were specific. I need to be a part of meetings. I'm going to do two a day early on. You can measure that because you know when those times are, and you can see that, yeah, I hit two meetings a day. And part of that was, like you said, the introducing yourself to one new person per meeting. So these things, you were very specific about it. You could measure it easy. It is attainable. All it was is as simple as this is when it is, and this is where I got to go and be there. Is it relevant? Yeah, it's incredibly vital to your
Yeah.
recovery to be at those, and time bound. I mean, it's again, I'm going to hit two meetings a day. 10 a week, maybe it is. Or if it's 14, even better, whatever it is. So you have that time in which you can measure that out and really see how it is. And it's good to track that. I that's why I encourage people, especially early on, and it's good to continue to do it. And something that I had to pick back up again recently is writing these things out. Write them out. Have a thing. If it's like you said, you wanted to get a job, you felt the calling to work in this area and help others through their recovery. Okay, what does it look like? Maybe it's as simple as I'm gonna apply at five different places or return to school. Maybe it's
Hmm.
get some kind of degree to be a addiction recovery specialist. I have a certification as an addiction recovery coach. For me, it was okay. I would like to do that. It's the course takes, it was like 3 months, class once a week, and then a final in-person thing, that I can measure it out.
Yeah.
And as long as I knew that relevance and the meaning behind it, and I was specific and focused on all that I had to do, it became very clear that it was simple, not easy, but simple.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I just want to touch on again that you said changing, sometimes you have to change the goals. I got back into school because of that job that I had. My goal, honestly, my goal was financial success was my only ambition and focus for about a year. And in that time, I did a lot of investments, made a lot of investments to gain more money. And my whole thought process was, all right, I'm going to work hard at this job so that I can get a raise, get more money, use that money to invest in other things, and just continue accumulating. About a year ago, I left that job, and it was really hard for me to change that focus.
Mm.
But I had started school because of that job because I had to have a RAD-T, and to keep your RAD-T, you have to work towards a KDAC. So I
What
had
are
to be in
both of
school.
those? People don't know those
Yeah,
acronyms.
the
Acronyms.
they're both for being working in treatment. You need both. So that RAD-T is a registered addiction or alcohol and drug technician, and the KDAC is a certified alcohol and drug counselor. So I was planning to get my KDAC and go to school and everything. But when I left that job, honestly, I felt like my goals had just been shattered. Like I had
Mm.
all these goals that I had set for the past almost a year, and it was really hard for me to change that focus. And honestly, it took me until probably a few months ago, and it's been over a year to like really be able to switch that focus internally. So even though I externally made the change and I got myself back into school for a completely different focus, it was hard for me to feel like I was doing the right thing and feel like it was okay for me to go after these other goals instead of jumping back into a different job immediately and just finding a different route to get to the same destination that I already wanted. But what I did instead was I went back to community college for accounting instead and changed my entire path. And I mean, in the end, it'll still be the same destination of having a lucrative career, hopefully.
Hmm.
But
Hmm.
I changed the sooner goal drastically to being graduating. And I think that for me, the type of person I am, that was extremely difficult. And I think it's important for everyone to know that sometimes God does for you what you cannot do for yourself. And
Yeah.
for me, that was one of the things because I am extremely uncomfortable with not having financial success be my primary focus in life.
Sure.
And because, you feel like I was just telling my sponsor actually, talking to him about this, that um, my second Christmas, so a little bit after I was a year sober, I bought like everyone in my family, like I bought them a specific personal Christmas gift. And this year, I just don't have the money to do that.
Yeah.
And I do have like an insecurity about it, and that I feel like I've had the wrong focus for the last year, and that I made the wrong decision to switch my goals instead of being time going to school full time. And I was talking to him about it that I know that this is a challenge for me, but that's why it's worth it because it's gonna overcoming these feelings is what allows me to grow as a person. And I don't want to be that person who is driven solely by imaginary gain. And my family doesn't care if I give them a present that much, as long as I'm there for them and they're happy. And I know that actually my family wants me to be in school more than anyone else. So
Yeah.
I think I just have to remember that the most important thing is that I continue to set goals and continue to try my best to achieve them. Whether or not everything goes the way that I want it to go is not the point. The point
Yeah.
is that I'm trying and that I think it's a even more. beneficial ability to be able to adapt to God's plan and not more more so than being able to complete a goal that I set myself.
Yeah. Well, and thank you for sharing that and being vulnerable about that. I mean, that's the thing that so many struggles, and I'm not saying this is you, but some feel like, oh, they got to make up time. They took so much from their loved ones. Look, your loved ones want what you want, and that's just to continue to remain sober and prosper. And prosperity isn't always more commas in your bank account, although that's great,
Yeah.
because I know for me that I went from no commas to now, hey, I got a comma. And now it's allowed me to be more giving towards charities that I maybe donate my time and talent as well as my financially. So all these things, but it's all a process. It's all a process of time and being patient and so many people do want to uh, you know, go into helping others through recovery after their recovery. And that may not be the path for you, like directly. Like I've just been continually brought opportunity in this way. That's why I do it. It's
Yeah.
how it came along with pain. Mr. Anderson, Flynn Anderson, founder. Well, we became friends and then an opportunity came up and I was like, yeah, no, I'd love to work with you. So, and use my skill sets. But that doesn't necessarily have to be everybody. You can still
Yeah.
go out and be an accountant and guess what? Be a very valued member of your recovery community just the
Yeah.
same. And who knows, maybe the accounting path is that some people are coming new to recovery and they're like, oh, hey, Julian, I heard you're an accountant. I'm horrible with my finances. I really just need some help. And maybe it's you being able to drop a half an hour of your time that helps someone get their finances on track. Because I don't know about you, it's the irony of my use was uh, I was spending money to get my fix, but one of the reasons I wanted to get my fix was my financial issues. I created my own trap of,
Yeah.
and then, oh, geez, now owe someone $200 because I had to pay for this bill, and I'll forget it. I'll just stop off, and this time I'll just buy the cheapest booze possible or whatever it was.
Yeah.
And it's that weird loop. So sometimes, we have certain skill sets that may not be a counselor, a therapist, or whatever else it is, but that we can help someone get out of the cycle part of it. And it's a beautiful thing. I know that I've had someone that's been near and dear to my life, my best friend all my life. My earliest memories meeting him at 3, very successful financial planner, and he helped me break that loop. I mean, I was on the verge of bankruptcy, and he's like, "I don't think you have to file for bankruptcy. Let's form a plan." And we did. And now I have a credit score over 800. I mean,
Dang.
I mean,
That's good.
I really rebuilt myself and not only externally, but how I think about and utilize money.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
so that's part of that transformation. So again, I'm going to put that in the description. SMART, it's a very good and helpful technique. Set those goals, measure it, attainable. Be willing to revise as you go and just examine it and share it with someone. That's again that benefit
Yeah.
of that sponsor sponsee relationship of being able to set out these goals because there's so many wonderful people that again, if you are in recovery, the value of having that sponsor. And I'm an encourager of therapy too, especially if you're like me, maybe there's some deep rooted traumas that were a part of your using. That's the vast majority of us. Very few of us are like, nah, childhood was good. I was just curious and tried opioids and I got hooked. That does exist, but many of us, there's a lineage of it. We have some childhood trauma and other things that took us down that path. So, yes, therapy, great. And, the sponsor. And I say, hey, have as many of them available to you as you can. Serve your recovery community, the meetings, having a sponsor, sponsee relationship, therapy, all these things, embrace them because you'll just start to solidify more and more at your core who and what you are.
Yeah, I agree for sure. I think that it's good to have a lot of, I like that you said that, therapy, sponsor, all these different things is good to have like a network of support. For, I've done all those, I've been to therapy and whatnot, and have a sponsor. And I think that for the long term, for me at least, the biggest thing has been my sponsor because he's to me he's been like a mentor and a spiritual advisor, and that has
Mm,
been the biggest help for me throughout my 3 years of recovery. And I think it one of the main things that the common themes in what he tells me is that my biggest problem is that I don't align myself with God's will. I try to make my own will. I try to go my own way. And I think that's necessary for finding out who you are, developing your characteristics and your personality and discovering yourself throughout your recovery. But you also need to know that God could slap you at any time and switch your direction, you know? And I've
yeah.
had that happen to me many times. And,
What's the
you
saying,
know,
Julian? You want to make God laugh, tell him your plans.
yeah, exactly. And I never wanted I had absolutely no desire to get into the field of recovery in any way really, you know. And I told you this before too as well that I never wanted recovery to be like a primary focus in my life. Ever since the beginning of my recovery, I was adamant that I wouldn't allow it to be the main thing in my life. And every step of the way, God has changed that for me. Even though I don't want it, I continuously don't uh, seek it out on my own. But those are the primary opportunities that up in my life. So I know that I'm doing the right thing every day because I know that I'm doing what God wants for me and not what I want for myself, which is
Absolutely.
usually helping other people in recovery.
Yeah. And yeah, it's a lot of that getting out of our own way.
Yeah,
Uh,
absolutely.
any other little tidbits that were helpful that maybe you want to drop?
Um, no, I think that was good.
All right.
Kind of said everything that I wanted to say. Just that don't get too hung up on especially if you're new in recovery, don't make enormous goals like so we're talking about the new year. Don't make a New Year's resolution to quit smoking if you have like 2 weeks sober. You know, it might
Yeah.
jeopardize your recovery. But I know some people who get rid of everything immediately altogether. It's a little different if you got sober and then the first month of your sobriety you were smoking like 2 packs a day, and then all of a sudden you just decide I'm done smoking. Like it might trigger your substance abuse as well. So once again, just don't make large rash decisions and for me praying about it and talking to my sponsor about the goals that I set helped me maintain a base in reality of how possible it is to accomplish these goals and that I set out to do.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, that importance of it and why I said, the 12 steps, a worthy endeavor for everyone. We need a sounding board from someone who's been there, gone through
Yeah.
it, understands, and will hold you accountable and call you out on your stinking thinking, which we
Yeah.
we we all it's going to take time till you start to see yourself in the world differently. And I hope any family members that are listening that you understand that about your loved one. It's going to take them time to start to figure out who and what they are in the world.
Yeah.
But it's a beautiful process. It
Yeah.
really is. So,
I forgot to mention that I just reminded me when you said that my dad actually he's not in recovery, but I mean he stopped drinking when he got with my mom. He's had maybe half a beer 5 to 10 times throughout the 20 something years they've been together. But he always says that he goes to AA meetings with us because that every single person should do it, whether you're an addict or not. The 12 steps are something that can benefit the entire world and something that should be implemented for everyone, not just addicts, because it would make everyone better. And I like that he points that out and that he tries to follow the rules of AA because he knows it makes him a better person and individually it makes our family better people. And so when we come together, it makes us a stronger and better family as well.
yeah, that's awesome. I still have yet to meet your folks and I look forward to it.
Yeah,
And 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 I want to close on that because it's if you have a loved one that is new to recovery, going through it, understand they are sick and suffering, no different than if they had another kind of illness or a cancer, that you would be going with the appointments with them, wanting to understand, listening to the doctors, being informed. The recovery process is the same. And you
Yeah.
really find that you get this deep bond. Like my dad is in recovery. I didn't understand it, Julian, until I
Yeah, me
went through
neither,
it
man.
myself. And once I did, I was like, wow, what my dad overcome.
Yeah.
And we have a very deep bond in that my brother and my mom, who are normies, won't understand. And
Yeah.
that's okay. They don't totally need to understand, but they've put the effort to. My brother will ask me
Yeah.
questions, and he's curious about it, and so it's vital because it is a family issue.
Yeah, absolutely. It's the exact same for my family. My mom, I used to not have a very good relationship with her until I got sober this last time, and really overcoming my addiction and her being there to help me out with it. It gave me a newfound respect, and also her opening up to me about her own recovery, because I didn't know, honestly, like I thought that she was dramatic about her alcoholism until she actually shared with me the details of what happened. Like I thought she had no struggle and that she just decided one day to stop drinking and made AA her book club, And like I
Hmm.
didn't realize she actually had the same struggles that I did. And it really me going through my recovery and her being there to support me gave us a bond that it is much stronger than I ever thought I'd have with her, and has brought our entire family, like my older brothers. I'm the youngest, and they've been a huge support to me as well.
Yeah. Well, we thank you all for listening to Pains Don't Hide the Scars podcast. Please hit that subscribe button if you're watching on our YouTube channel. Yes, we got a YouTube channel, Apple Podcast, Spotify, whatever it is. Leave a thumb up, leave a rating, leave a comment in the comments section, and please share with others. And we'd like to wish you and yours a very happy new year. And we'll continue to be out here putting out the podcast. And don't forget about the Wednesday night support group. I got that information in the podcast description as well. We'd love to see you there, either in person or via Zoom. If you have a loved one, maybe who's struggling, new to recovery, and you would just like that support of other family members who are there for their loved ones.